The war between the Galactic Union and the Draxian Empire had raged for decades. Starships burned in the void, planets were reduced to ash, and countless lives were lost. The Union was desperate, they needed pilots, even untested ones. That's where he came in. A young human, barely out of training, stood in the hangar of the Union flagship, Star's Fury. His name was Jake, just Jake. No fancy titles, no legendary bloodline. Just a rookie with fast reflexes and a stubborn will to survive. The alien officers around him sneered. Humans were weak, they said. Too soft for war. But Jake ignored them, his eyes locked on the sleek fighter assigned to him, Storm Chaser. It was old, battered, but it was his. Listen well, human, hissed Commander Vex, a tall, scaled officer from a warrior race. You will fly patrol. Stay out of the fight. If you see the enemy, you run. Understood? Jake nodded, but his grip tightened on the flight helmet. Run? No. He hadn't come this far to hide. The alarm blared. Red lights flashed. Draxian attack fleet detected. All pilots, to your ships. Jake sprinted, heart pounding. This was it, his first real battle. The cockpit sealed around him as Storm Chaser roared to life. The launch catapult hurled him into the blackness of space. And then he saw them. Draxian fighters, sleek and deadly, swarming like locusts. Union ships exploded around him. Jake's breath came fast, but his hands were steady. A voice crackled in his ear, another pilot, a veteran. Kid, fall back. You don't stand a chance. Jake gritted his teeth. Maybe not. But he wasn't running. Then, something impossible happened. A Draxian cruiser, massive and terrifying, turned its guns, not on the Union fleet, but on its own fighters. Confusion rippled through the battlefield. Jake's sensors blinked wildly. The cruiser's systems were hacked. And then, a new signal cut through the chaos. A voice, calm and amused. Human pilot. You have our attention. Jake's blood ran cold. Who, or what, had just joined the fight? Jake's fingers hovered over the controls. The Draxian cruiser, a monstrous warship that should have been vaporizing Union fighters, was instead tearing into its own fleet. Explosions flared across the battlefield as confused alien pilots scrambled to evade their own allies. Human pilot. You have our attention. The voice was smooth, almost amused. It didn't sound like any alien Jake had ever heard, no growl, no hiss, just a calm, almost human tone. Who the hell is this? Jake muttered, scanning his comms. The signal wasn't Union. It wasn't Draxian. It was coming from nowhere. Then, his sensors flickered. A shadow moved at the edge of the battle, a ship, sleek and black, shaped like a dagger. It wasn't on any known database. It wasn't broadcasting any ID. It was watching. Commander Vex's voice suddenly cut through the chaos. All units, fall back. The Draxians are in disarray, regroup at the rally point. Jake hesitated. His instincts screamed at him to follow orders. But something about that black ship. A burst of static. Then, the voice again. Curious. You are not running. Jake swallowed hard. Who are you? A pause. Then, laughter. Soft, chilling. We are the ones who have been waiting. Before Jake could respond, the black ship moved. 1 second it was there, the next, gone. Not cloaked. Not warped. Just, vanished. Then, the Draxian cruiser exploded. Not from missiles. Not from internal sabotage. It simply came apart, like an invisible hand had crushed it. Jake's breath caught in his throat. The battle was over. The surviving Draxian fighters fled, their formation broken. The Union forces, stunned, slowly regrouped. Back on the Star's Fury, the hangar was buzzing. Pilots whispered. Officers argued. No one had ever seen anything like this. Commander Vex stormed toward Jake, his scaled face twisted in fury. "What did you do, human?" Jake pulled off his helmet. "Me? I didn't do anything. You were the only one near that cruiser when it went down." Jake opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. Because standing at the edge of the hangar, unnoticed by anyone else, was a figure. Tall. Cloaked. Watching him. And then, just like the ship, it was gone. Jake's heart hammered. Whatever had just joined this war, it wasn't on either side. And for some reason, it was interested in him. The mess hall of Star's Fury buzzed with nervous energy. Pilots from a dozen species huddled over their rations, whispering about the battle. Some claimed it was a secret Union weapon. Others swore the Draxians had turned on themselves. Jake sat alone, pushing tasteless synth paste around his tray. His hands still trembled slightly. That voice. That ship. That figure in the hangar. No one else had seen it. "Mind if I join you?" Jake looked up. A female Tarkian, tall, blue-skinned, with sharp silver eyes, stood over him. Her name was Lieutenant Kira, one of the few Union officers who hadn't treated him like garbage. He nodded. She slid into the seat across from him. "You flew well out there," she said. Jake snorted. "I didn't do anything. That cruiser just died." Kira leaned in, voice dropping. "I've been in this war for 5 years. I've never seen anything like what happened today." She paused. "But I've heard stories." Jake's pulse quickened. "What kind of stories?" Before she could answer, alarms blared. "All personnel, report to battle stations. Draxian reinforcements inbound." Jake and Kira sprinted to the hangar. The storm chaser sat where he'd left it, mechanics scrambling to patch its armor. Commander Vex stood at the launch bay, barking orders. "This is no skirmish, the Draxians are sending a full assault fleet. We hold the line or we die." Jake grabbed his helmet. Kira caught his arm. "Be careful," she said. "Something isn't right about this." Then they were launching, dozens of fighters screaming into the void. The Draxians were waiting. Not just fighters this time, capital ships, destroyers, a massive command carrier at the rear. The Union forces were hopelessly outnumbered. Jake's targeting system lit up as enemy locks flooded his screen. "All wings, engage at will," Vex ordered. The battle exploded into chaos. Jake twisted through laser fire, squeezing off shots when he could. A Draxian fighter burst apart under his guns. Then another. But there were too many. Union ships died by the dozen. Then. A flicker on his scanner. The black ship. It materialized directly in the center of the battle, silent and unmoving. Every weapon in the Draxian fleet immediately swung toward it. The voice crackled in Jake's ear, calm as ever. "Watch closely, human." The Draxians fired. 100 plasma bolts streaked toward the black ship. And stopped. Frozen in space. Motionless. Then, impossibly, they reversed. The Draxian ships erupted as their own firepower slammed back into them. Jake could only stare as the entire enemy fleet was torn apart in seconds. The black ship turned slowly, facing him. The battlefield had gone silent. Jake's hands shook as he gripped the storm chaser's controls. The Draxian fleet, what remained of it, was in full retreat. The black ship hung motionless in space, as if waiting. A new transmission cut through the static. "Human. Approach." Jake swallowed hard. Every instinct screamed at him to flee. But if this thing wanted him dead, he already would be. He nudged the throttle. His fighter drifted toward the black ship. Up close, it was even more unsettling. No visible weapons, no engines, just smooth, featureless darkness. Then, a section of its hull rippled, forming an opening just large enough for his fighter. A docking bay. "Kid, what are you doing?" Kira's voice crackled over the comm, "Get out of there." Jake took a deep breath. "I don't think I have a choice." He guided the storm chaser inside. The interior was pitch black. Then, light, soft and blue, spilled across the walls, revealing a cavernous hangar. His fighter settled onto the deck with a faint hum. The cockpit hissed open. Jake stepped out, helmet under his arm. The air was cold, sterile. A figure emerged from the shadows. Tall. Humanoid. Cloaked in shifting darkness. Its face was hidden, but Jake could feel its gaze. "You are the one," it said. Its voice was the same as before, calm, almost bored. "The one what?" Jake's pulse pounded in his ears. The figure tilted its head. "The one who sees." Before Jake could respond, the ship moved. Not like a normal vessel, there was no rumble of engines, no inertia. One moment they were in deep space. The next, the view screens flashed with streaks of light. They were traveling faster than anything Jake had ever experienced. "Where are we going?" he demanded. "Home," the figure said. The stars blurred. Then, a planet appeared. Massive. Dark. Covered in towering spires that gleamed like obsidian. Jake's breath caught. This wasn't on any Union map. This wasn't anywhere in known space. The figure gestured to a screen. Images flashed, wars, civilizations rising and falling, entire galaxies burning. "We have watched," it said. "For millennia. Waiting for a species worthy of survival." Jake's stomach dropped. "You're judging us?" The figure went still. Then, for the first time, it laughed. "No, human. We are offering you a weapon." A section of the wall slid open. Inside, floating in a sphere of blue light, was something that looked like a pilot's neural interface, but sleeker, alive with energy. "Take it," the figure said. "And end this war." Jake reached out. The second his fingers brushed the device, pain exploded through his skull. Visions flooded his mind. Battles. Blood. A voice whispering. "You will change everything." Then, blackness. Consciousness returned like a slow sunrise. Jake groaned, his skull pounding as if split open. He was lying on a cold, smooth surface, not the black ship, not the storm chaser. A dim, circular chamber surrounded him, its walls pulsing with faint blue veins of light. The neural device was gone. But something was different. His vision flickered, suddenly seeing heat signatures through the walls. His hearing sharpened, catching the hum of distant machinery he shouldn't have been able to detect. And beneath it all, a whisper in his mind, like a second voice just below his thoughts. "Awake." Jake shot upright, and froze. The cloaked figure stood over him. Up close, its shifting darkness seemed alive, tendrils of shadow curling like smoke around its limbs. "The integration is complete," it said, though its mouth never moved. The words formed directly in Jake's skull. "What did you do to me?" Jake's voice sounded raw. "Gave you the key." The figure stepped back. "The war you fight is meaningless. The Draxians. The Union. Both will burn when the true enemy arrives." Jake's head throbbed as another vision flashed, a fleet of monstrous ships, unlike anything he'd ever seen, tearing through galaxies. "They are coming. And you will stand against them." A door hissed open behind the figure. Go. Your people need proof. Jake stumbled to his feet. His body felt lighter, faster. His thoughts clearer. As he stepped through the doorway, he realized with a jolt where he was, back in the hangar of the Star's Fury. His fighter sat exactly where he'd left it. But something was wrong. The hangar was deserted. No mechanics. No pilots. Just emergency lights casting long shadows. An alarm wailed in the distance. Jake ran for the nearest terminal and slapped the comm panel. Repeat, all hands, prepare for boarders. Draxian assault shuttles have breached Deck 12. The Fury was under attack. And then he felt it, a pressure behind his eyes, a sudden awareness. He could sense the Draxians moving through the ship's lower levels. Dozens of them. Headed straight for the bridge. Jake didn't think. He just moved. His legs carried him faster than should have been possible, darting through corridors with unnatural precision. He rounded a corner just as a squad of Draxian shock troopers leveled their plasma rifles at a barricade manned by Union crew. Time seemed to slow. Jake saw every detail, the way the lead Draxian's finger tensed on the trigger. The terrified expression of the young engineer behind the barricade. The exact angle he'd need to. He leaped. The Draxians didn't even have time to turn before Jake was among them. His fist connected with the first soldier's throat with surgical precision. A spin, a kick, another went down. He moved like water, flowing between their shots, disarming them with movements he'd never trained for. 5 seconds. 5 unconscious Draxians. The Union crew stared at him, mouths open. One whispered, "What are you?" Jake didn't answer. He could feel more boarders. Dozens more. And beneath that, something deeper. A signal. A pattern. The Draxians weren't just attacking. They were running from something. The ship's intercom crackled to life. All personnel, Draxian boarding parties have reached engineering. Defensive positions. The transmission cut off with a burst of static. Jake didn't hesitate. He sprinted down the corridor, his enhanced senses mapping the fastest route. The whispers in his mind grew louder, guiding him like a compass. Left. Down the lift shaft. They're herding the crew toward the reactor. He vaulted over a fallen support beam, his boots barely making a sound. The Fury shuddered, another impact. The Draxians weren't just boarding. They were desperate. Jake skidded to a halt outside engineering. The heavy blast doors were sealed, but he could hear the chaos inside, plasma fire, shouts, the hissing snarls of Draxian warriors. Then, a new sound. A low, resonant hum, vibrating through the deck plates. The door controls were dead. Locked from within. Jake raised his fist, and paused. His knuckles gleamed with a faint blue light. The same energy from the alien device. He pushed. The blast door crumpled like paper. Inside, the battle froze. Union soldiers crouched behind overturned consoles, their weapons trained on a dozen Draxians in full combat armor. But the aliens weren't attacking. They were kneeling. Their weapons lay discarded. Their clawed hands pressed against the deck. And at the center of the room, bathed in the reactor's glow, stood a single Draxian officer, his crimson armor cracked, his face bare in surrender. "You," the officer hissed, his yellow eyes locking onto Jake. "You carry the mark." Jake stepped forward, the whispers in his mind surging. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. The Draxian bared his fangs, not in anger, but in something like relief. "We came to warn you," he growled. "The Devourers have awakened." A chill ran down Jake's spine. The visions from the black ship flooded back, the monstrous fleet, the galaxies burning. The Union soldiers exchanged confused glances. Their captain, a grizzled veteran with a plasma burn across his cheek, kept his rifle trained on the Draxian. "Explain." "Now." The Draxian officer didn't flinch. "3 cycles ago, our outer colonies went dark. No distress calls. No debris. Just silence. Then the sightings began." He tapped a device on his wrist. A hologram flickered to life, a massive, jagged ship, blacker than space itself, its surface shifting like liquid shadow. "They are coming. For all of us." Jake's pulse roared in his ears. He recognized that ship. It was just like the one that had given him his power. But this one felt hungry. The deck trembled. Alarms wailed. "Warning, unknown contacts exiting warp. Repeat, unknown." The hologram flickered. The Draxian officer's eyes widened in pure terror. "Too late," he whispered. Outside the viewports, the stars began to die. Silence swallowed the stars' fury. Every screen, every viewport showed the same nightmare. The Devourer ships didn't move like normal vessels, they unfolded from the darkness, jagged and wrong, their edges blurring like smeared ink. Space itself warped around them. Jake's enhanced vision burned with overlapping warnings, gravitational anomalies, energy spikes beyond measurement, radiation signatures that made no sense. The Draxian officer gripped Jake's arm, claws digging in. "You carry their kin's power," he rasped. "You can fight them." The Union captain barked orders. "All batteries, open fire. Launch every fighter we have." Jake barely heard them. The whispers in his mind had become a song, ancient, furious. "They are the end," the voice from the black ship murmured through him. "But you are the flaw in their design." Blue light erupted from Jake's hands. It spread like lightning across his body, forming armor of pure energy. The crew stumbled back. The Draxians gasped. Jake moved. 1 second he was in engineering. The next. Space. No suit. No ship. Just him, floating before the Devourer fleet, his body blazing like a newborn star. The lead Devourer ship twisted toward him. A soundless scream vibrated through the void, shattering nearby asteroids. Jake raised his hands. No. The blue light exploded outward. It struck the Devourer vessels, and for the first time in millennia, something hurt them. Their impossible hulls cracked. Black fluid, thick like oil, gushed into the vacuum. The song in Jake's mind became a roar of triumph. But the Devourers weren't finished. The largest ship rippled, then split apart, revealing something inside. A maw. A gateway. A mouth. From it poured a wave of pure annihilation. Jake braced. A shadow flashed past him. The black ship. His black ship. It intercepted the blast, shuddering under the impact, but held. The cloaked figure appeared beside Jake, its form flickering. You cannot win alone, it said. But together. Across the battlefield, Draxian and Union ships side by side, weapons charging. We make them bleed star. Asterisk. Jake smiled. The final battle began.